I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the whole Jontay Porter situation. If you've been listening to this podcast and you are someone that subscribes to this podcast, and if for whatever reason you don't, just hit the little Google machine. A story will pop up over at LSR so that you can read all the Jontay Porter stuff. But Adam, we at least have now a little bit more clarity as to how this all went down. We knew he was guilty anyway, but he has gone ahead and let us know that he is definitely guilty.
Our new CEO for our overall company here at LSR is a regular listener to our podcast, and he likes when we talk about what's next, right? When we talk about spinning things forward. And I think that's where we can get into talking about the Jontay Porter story here right now. The news of the day is that today pleads guilty in a New York federal court to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He'll be sentenced later. It appears that the sentencing is anywhere from 41 to 51 months on the prosecutor's recommendation. Could be likely in the range of 4 years, could be his sentence. Now, some of the documents from this court proceeding were sealed, which could, and put on my junior lawyer hat here, indicate that there could be ongoing prosecutions, investigations when it comes to this case. We noticed, of course, that there were multiple arrests along the way, multiple charges along the way for the co-conspirators with Jontay Porter. Could this potentially be digging into something deeper? Don't know for sure, but when we see those sealed documents, it certainly tips off our attention to say, hey, that's interesting that some of this is not available to us. But as we spin it forward, I still think the most interesting thing that came out of this was an exclusive that we had at LSR from our Mike Mazzio, in which he found out that the NBA was beginning to open up discussions about banning certain types of prop wagers. And that discussion is, of course, at its stages of infancy right now. But we know that the league might potentially use this as an opening to discuss whether or not there should be available markets on all players, what those markets should be like. Of course, from the sportsbook's perspective, should they be limited in some way? Who should be able to put wagers on them, on and on and on from that. I think that's really where this goes, is that we've talked a number of times about, is this the big one, right? Is this the big news story? Is this the tipping point? And we thought it was going to be Shohei Ohtani, right? Before it turned out it really wasn't Shohei Ohtani, it was Ippei Mizuhara. The Porter thing is such a clear line drawn from athlete to betting scandal that I think this is the one that could resonate a little bit in terms of the NBA making some progress with that. Is it going to be widespread that the big 4 or 5 operators aren't offering NBA prop bets? Of course not. Might it be a situation where, as you've discussed, the 13th guy at the end of the bench doesn't become the most bet market at a major sports book on any single day? Yeah, I think that's more likely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I just don't think that this is that big of a deal. And if it solves any sort of potential problems down the line, I don't really understand why there would be much resistance. I mean, I understand you want to offer all the markets you can. You don't want to funnel any money to offshores or to illegal bookies or whatever it might be. I know what the arguments will be from the other side. That being said, the money is so small anyway. And honestly, if a street bookie wants to take a ton of money on the 13th guy on the bench, I guess so, more power to him, because I mean, we see what that is all about, right? It might mean something is up when it all comes down to it. And, the handle is so small on this type of stuff. But the perception of sports and sports betting and the, air quote, fixed things, and the people are out there that are still convinced the games are fixed and that all this stuff is happening all the time amongst all of these players. And we've tried to explain as rationally as humanly possible. Like, most of these guys are making 8 figures, and it's just never in their best interest to do anything like this, to jeopardize their $100 million, $200 million contracts and stuff. But there are guys like Jontay Porter, again, that could be the fly in the ointment, and I just don't think it's all that necessary when it all comes down to it. And whether that means, Adam, whether that means, do you have to ban them outright? Do you, if you want to make sure that you just offer something on every guy, do you put a $200 limit on, so whatever, like something? I'm open for discussion with all of this, but the fact that, they were able to get down what they were able to get down on him, I think is kind of an eye-opening deal of, is this really necessary? Is this really something we need to be doing? And what is the best way to kind of move forward with all this?
Well, to put some numbers to what you're talking about, Jontay Porter's salary on a 2-way contract in 23-24 was $410,000. Yeah. Good money to a lot of people listening to this podcast, yes. Not good money for a professional athlete, right? Now, you talk about what kind of wagers should be available. I think we would all say if there's an $80,000 parlay on Jontay Porter on any given day, that's the type of wager that was unsurprisingly flagged by DraftKings and then ended up in front of the FBI to say, hey, we might have some of the world's dumbest criminals once again trying to rig something in the betting market. So there is a reasonable discussion to be had. And the whole thing about people who go back to the axiom of, well, it's going to drive people offshore. Take the idea that we talk about in healthcare all the time of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and apply that here. An ounce of self-regulation, an ounce of self-restraint will be a lot smarter than the pound of regulation or cure that would be coming down from regulators, that would be coming down, more importantly, from legislators, from Congress, from any of the actors who do not always have the nuanced understanding of the industry that those who work on it day to day do.
And that's basically what it comes down to, because while you and I have, we know sports enough, so not only do we know this industry and know sports betting and whatever, we know sports enough, so we understand that yes, these guys, these stars, are not going to jeopardize their, $100 million contracts on top of their endorsement deals, on top of their, all of the things like that they would have to lose in all of this. Like, we get that and we understand that. We are rational enough to get it, but all you have to do is put this in front of a person who doesn't follow sports, who doesn't care to follow sports, or doesn't care to hear the rational side of it, right? Because that's the other thing that we've seen in some of these discussions whenever we're listening to legislators debate things back and forth, Adam, is like where we kind of have to like roll our eyes and because some people don't want to hear the truth, right? Some people don't want to hear the rational explanation of anything. They just want the blood right then. They want the blood and they want it and they don't care how it got there. And so can we just avoid that? Maybe we just avoid that.
I wouldn't mind that. I like avoiding.
Yeah.
I like avoiding in general. You might hear that from, ex-girlfriends or something like that on my side. Like he doesn't mind avoiding things.